Hey guys, I'm Dr. Lynn, and I thought that today I could teach you a little bit about the physiology of stress and what happens in your body when you're stressed out, whether it's acute stress or chronic stress. The first thing I like to go over is this analogy. So picture a springboard, the type of springboard you would see near a pool, and let's just say that that's your body. And now this big red ball, we'll call it stress, comes and hits the springboard. Now the first time this happens, the springboard is strong, able to deal with it, and able to bounce it right off into the pool. However, if it becomes chronic and the big red stress ball keeps falling on it, over time the spring mechanism isn't able to deal with the constant stress of having this ball, and so instead of being able to bounce it off, it's just able to bounce it back up and off just a little bit, but not enough to really get it off. And so it just keeps weighing it down and down until it can no longer do its function of being a springboard. And the same thing can happen to us in our bodies, is that when it comes to acute stress, we're able to deal with it really well, but then when it comes to chronic stress, our bodies can feel quite depleted and aren't necessarily able to keep going and keep adapting and making all those big changes to deal with the stress. And that's when it becomes really depleted, and you might feel a lot of the symptoms associated with that. So when it comes to the physiology especially, both of them actually start in the hypothalamus, but then from there everything's completely different, whether it's acute, such as a car accident or a presentation, or chronic, like what happens with a lot of overwork, busy schedules, not being able to sleep, relationship issues. And when it comes to short-term stress, so the hypothalamus needs to tell the adrenal glands that you are stressed out, and it does so through a nerve impulse that goes through the spinal cord and directly interacts with the adrenal glands to tell them to produce adrenaline and noradrenaline. And that will lead to increased heart rate, increased respiration rate, using up all your glycogen stores to convert it to glucose so that you can be in survival mode and make it through the day. It also decreases your digestion so that, again, you can focus on everything else as opposed to digestion so that you can survive. When it comes to chronic stress, it's a little bit different. The hypothalamus still needs to talk with the adrenal glands, but it does so through intermediates. And in this case, it's actually the pituitary gland. And so it releases CRH, corticotropin releasing hormone, and it sends that off to the pituitary gland to tell it that you're stressed out. And how the pituitary gland responds is that it also releases a hormone called ACTH, adrenocorticotropin hormone. And that hormone ends up in your bloodstream, which then ends up in your adrenal glands to tell it to release things like DHEA, cortisol, as well as aldosterone. And what happens in your body when it comes to chronic stress and those signals is a little bit different. So you might still get the increased heart rate, the increased respiration rate, but what you tend to have is, the aldosterone leads to increased sodium in your blood, which then lifts up your blood pressure. You also end up with a decreased immune system. You end up with a lot of cortisol in your body. And so that's typically what happens in your body with short-term versus long-term stress. And then if we look at long-term stress on its own, we can then differentiate stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 of long-term or chronic stress, because your body will respond differently whether the chronic stress has been going on for a short period of time or whether it's been going on for years and years. And for everyone, that timeline is going to be very different. Some people, they might get to stage 3 within a few months. Other people might actually take a few years. And stage 1 is typically, you're chronically stressed out, but your body's still able to compensate and produces a lot of cortisol. And after a while, it's no longer able to compensate in that way and ends up not being able to produce all of this cortisol, which then leads to stage 2, where the cortisol levels are slowly starting to go down and are now in normal. However, your adrenal glands aren't feeling normal and are actually quite depleted, not able to maintain these levels either. And so that's when we head into stage 3, which is adrenal exhaustion and burnout. And that's because your body can no longer compensate for the major stressors going on in your life. And again, that leads to a lot of changes, like circadian rhythm changes, like inflammatory changes, weight changes, mood changes, right? And so that's why it's important to figure out a way to deal with stress. And I can definitely go over that with you guys in another video as to how to deal with stress, and each stage will actually require different treatments depending on where you are, just because one of them has really, really high cortisol and the other one has really, really low cortisol. And so treatment plans will actually differ depending on which stage you are in. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, or you can email me personally, as well as send me a private message through Facebook or Instagram. And don't forget to follow me on social media. Thanks and have a nice day.